I watched your video, and you pulled out some villains that you think are the ones that are behind all this.
The Salem 7 with Nicholas Scratch.
Okay. Let me mention something that I noticed, because, like, this thing is riddled with Easter eggs, isn't it?
Yes.
Riddled. There was one comment. I think it was during the talent show, where that one woman is like, the devil's in the details.
Everyone has been.
That's not the only place he is.
Everyone has been talking about that, as that is the.
Okay.
Yes.
So people picked up on it.
That is apparently what everyone is using as their proof that Mephisto is behind it. Now, this is what I'm thinking, Tom.
No, that's what I was thinking.
Right. So Marvel has a formula. We know they have formulas. They have formulas the way each of their movies are written, but they also have a formula about how they tie them all together. So this is the beginning of Phase 4. This is also the beginning of the Disney Plus series of shows. So I'm thinking, what if they're following the formula they set up for Avengers? Yes, Mephisto's the bad guy, but he is Thanos in this series, as Thanos was in the first Avengers movie. So he still needs an agent that's doing everything, which is what led me to Nicholas Scratch. Now, what? Now, maybe she called her cat. Agnes called her cat Senior Scratchy. Maybe that was the show's way of just tipping the hat to saying, we know there's a character, Nicholas Scratch, but you're not seeing him.
Okay. Would Nicholas Scratch have the ability to become a cat?
Probably. He's the only witch in New Salem that was, in the original storyline, more powerful than him was Agatha Harkness, his mother. So what do you think about the dude in the commercials?
Definitely Hydra, right?
Well, the first commercial was Stark and the second was Hydra.
First commercial was...
And it was the same.
The toaster?
The toaster was a Stark toaster. And the only thing in that black and white commercial was the red dot. The red dot on the toaster. But it's the same guy and it's the same girl that was in the Hydra watch commercial.
Right. That's interesting.
You don't present a shotgun in scene 1 if you're not going to use it in scene 2, the old writing cliche. So he is somebody. That's why I think he's got to be. So if Nicholas Scratch isn't in it, he might be Nightmare. Now, Nightmare is a demon that works with / for Mephisto in the past. They have similar agendas.
So, what was the deal with the helicopter, the toy helicopter?
In an earlier series of trailers, they showed, now a lot of the reviewers are saying it is exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. It's similar to a sword helicopter that's seen flying over the force field, the mystic bubble, or whatever is covering this town. And then in the trailers, the way they cut the trailers and the way Disney released it, it looks like, because they cut it that from there, the next thing you see is Wanda pulling it in color out of the black and white world, the bush. So it was implied, and a lot of reviewers took it to mean that tried to get through. That's what the banging sound was. Now, here's a point about the banging sound nobody else, because I've watched a bunch of videos, nobody else has spoken about. The very first episode, she wakes up to the banging, right?
Yeah.
Vision gets up finally, looks out the damn window. There's no tree there. And then he jumps back into bed, hearing the banging. He says, the only thing I see are your bushes, or your rose bushes. And then there's a bang while he's standing, looking out the window, and he jumps back to bed. And by the time Wanda finally has enough of it and nuts up, She uses her magic, opens the window, and it's a branch. That wasn't there. That's not what was making the noise. That was retconned. That was like in the movie The Matrix, when he saw the cat, the deja vu, and he said they just changed something in the program. That is exactly what that was. Was that the helicopter coming down? Well, that was episode 2. But whatever that was, we don't know. Do you think this is a comedy, or do you think this is a horror?
Oh, I think it's both. I think they're definitely genre bending. But I think what they're doing is it's Twilight Zone, right? It's
Twin
horror,
Peaks,
but it's like a mind bender. Now, I'm sure you've read this, but I found this really interesting. They didn't want to start this whole new phase with WandaVision.
No.
A bunch of stuff was supposed to come before this. The Black Widow stuff.
I just heard today they finally might just give up the ghost on that May movie release and put it up on streaming, because everything in their schedule is getting screwed up. If this doesn't go away to the point where they can get the numbers and the seats in the theaters in May, they literally cannot afford through their timeline, because Sony has a hard date for Spider-Man 3. They're working against Sony's timeline also. And Spider-Man 3 has huge ramifications because of WandaVision. Feige has already stated pretty much right out, because he's been doing a lot of talks lately. And what's going on in WandaVision is affecting Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man 3. In fact, I think everything in Phase 4 that's not in the past, like Black Widow. Black Widow is a prequel series, a movie. But everything that's currently timeline Phase 4, I think there is going to be otherworldly, extra-dimensional, alternate reality, parallel Earth ramifications through every single series and movie until it's fixed. Okay, now here's my newest idea on Vision, dude. Because what's up with Vision?
Oh, exactly. What's up with Vision?
Vision is a synthezoid. He's not a robot. He doesn't have he doesn't have cogs inside him for gum to do that. Okay, here's my thought. There was a storyline where Vision got disassembled and he got destroyed. And they put him back together, and he didn't have his emotions at all. And in fact, he was white. Everything, him, his skin, his costume, everything was white, with just lines defining where like the costume was and stuff. And during this time period that he was emotionless, him and Wanda became extremely distant. So since Feige likes to pick and choose interesting parts of different famous comic storylines, what if what Black Panther's sister Shuri said when they were trying to fix him during the attack on Wakanda, right? She said he can survive without this, basically is what she said. And even Banner agreed that he doesn't need the stone to work. So my guess is, after Wanda got snapped back with everyone else, they fixed Vision. But because he didn't have the stone, he didn't have emotions. He was just an android. And Wanda looked at what they presented her, and she said no. Yeah. Just like the end of episode 2, which brings me to another thought. If you look at that guy behind the thing, he vaguely looks like Vision. What if that is the real Vision, the emotionless android Vision, who he couldn't phase in through the magic shield, so had to come in underneath. I still don't know what's up with the bees. That still throws me up for a loop. But when Wanda sees that version of Vision, she says no, and rewinds it back before he came in. leaving her with her version of Vision, the way she remembers it. But get this, bringing it back to how I started this, Tom, because she's not a scientist and she doesn't understand how Vision works. She's not an engineer. That's why the gummed up his work. Because as far as she knows, he does have cogs inside him. So that's the way her reality-altering subconscious made him. What do you think?
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I love that. I am so in on this show. The show is awesome.
They could never have done this as a movie.
Never.
No. Last thought. Last thing. Do you have any prediction that you think is going to happen in episode 3? No.
What? Do you have something?
The only prediction I have for episode 3, and just to let everyone know, this is Thursday night in New York City at 8:23 p.m. or so. Oh, it says it right there, 8:22. My only thought is by the end of episode 3, we're going to see more of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not going to be just the panning fade out of the screen. We are going to see Randall Park. We are going to see Kat Denning. We are going to... Now, I also have a thought we might see Monica Rambeau, because I'm not 100% sure that's the real Monica Rambeau that's in there, but I don't know how she would have created her if she doesn't know her. So that thought of mine might be going nowhere. But there's going to be a pullback, I think, not of the screen. I think there's going to be a pullback where we're going to see the larger environment of what's going on.
Okay. I would love that. That'd be amazing.
All right, brother. So I'm gonna run this part of the video before my spoiler recap, so we can see if we got anything right.
Love it. I can't wait.
All right, so that was a quick little recap of what me and Tom V were talking about last night, and it looks like I partially got the ending right about not seeing just the camera for a sword panning out and looking at the notes, but we were actually going to see the sword base. Now, that's just common storytelling. By that point, they had to have shown us something else. There's no inner workings in how I figured out Marvel did that. That's just standard writing. Okay, it didn't go as deep as I thought. We didn't actually see in detail Randall Park or Kat Denning, but that just means that next episode, that's when those major characters will be introduced. The rest of the show, what's been going on so far? Well, I really want to talk about this. So this is going to be spoiler heavy, spoilers. You have been warned. Okay, go watch episode 3 and episode 1 and 2, obviously, as well. And then come back here and we're ready to go. Now, the episode opens up, as we would expect after the first 2 episodes, as an homage to the 70s style of shows. Particularly, this has a very heavy influence from the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family. We can see that in the intro with the Brady Bunch heavily, the inside of the apartment heavily Brady Bunch. The outside of it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Partridge Family, and the song, especially more so, reminds me of Partridge Family. Something about the show, I don't know what about the set, but something about it also kind of threw in a little bit of Family Affair to me. I also kind of picked up on that. I loved the Brady Bunch reference to Kitty Carryall when Vision was practicing doing diapers on the baby. That was great. Tip of the hat to the Brady Bunch with everything else there. But let's talk about what happened, why I think it happened, and where it may be going from there. All right, now, besides the obvious that it was a little bit strange that she's pregnant so fast and so advancedly pregnant so fast, one thing that Vision said to Dr. Nielsen ratings? To Dr. Nielsen was that they wanted to keep it in the family. What family? In the movies, Vision has no family at all unless you're talking about, well, Ultron, who's dead, Stark, who is dead, I guess he's got a little bit of Banner in him, but they haven't really done anything to connect him and Banner as family in the movies. Wanda has a brother Pietro. But we'll get to that. So that was a little strange. It was also a little strange. We get to see a little bit of the system running afoul of a monkey wrench in the gears, so to speak, as Herb, who was trimming his hedges, is suddenly trimming the wall. And in a way that he really doesn't seem to make a big deal about at all. Was this just a simple glitch? Or was this more of a subconscious cry for help? I need to escape. That's kind of the way I took it. There was another thing said by Vision concerning how fast the pregnancy was going. He says, boy, I thought I had super speed. He really doesn't. Although in the series he's been shown to have speedster, in a comic book term, speedster level abilities, he's never really been a speedster. That's Wanda's brother and son. So why does Vision all of a sudden have that power? That's confusing. But then again, I don't think this is Vision. I think, as I was talking to Tommy V, you saw in the beginning of this video, I think that this is the John Byrne run of Vision, where he was reconstructed and he was emotionless, even nullified his marriage to Wanda because he was a synthezoid and it meant nothing to him, and it'd be far better if they just weren't married. Again, strengthening my theory that when Wanda saw this in the TV series and before the story happened, she just said no. That was not her vision. But anyway, yeah, Vision does mention having powers that he's not supposed to have. Now, we're also beginning to see a lot more obvious ties between Wanda and her environment here, especially when her water breaks. Not only is it affecting her house, as you would expect it in a Bewitched sort of style goings on, since she's effectively a witch in the series, even though they've moved on beyond that particular sitcom reference, it's still an overrunning theme. So her water breaks, but it happens everywhere. Because then suddenly Geraldine is showing up saying that her water broke in her house as well. I'm going to get back to that. But these are the first clear signs that Wanda is definitely psychically connected to more than just her own immediate area, her home, her surround, her being next to Vision. This is affecting the entire neighborhood because during the water breaking, it causes a blackout. And the blackout we see affects the entire neighborhood. Now, this leads to a very interesting scene that could otherwise have just gone by. In this scene, the neighbor is asking her husband if these earrings make her look fat. That's not the point of the scene. The scene is the newspaper he's reading. Now, the Westview Herald says that 2 new fire hydrants were added to Main Street. The way the newspaper looks, the way it's sitting in his hand, folded in his hand, it looks like 2 fire hydras. Hydra. Maybe fire is, or they were fired. Is anyone missing from the series? But it does definitely say Hydra. And that's not the only reference to Hydra that we get in this show. We get that reference again in the commercial. Now, I just want to remind you that in the first commercial, it was for a Stark toaster, all in black and white, with just the red light on the toaster being red, everything else black and white. And the next one was for a Strucker Hydra watch. So this one, set in the 70s, is a housewife who is frustrated at the daily events of everything breaking down, failing around her miserably. Her life is in shambles. Her kids just don't care. And that's when you hear the man's voice. Though you don't see him in this commercial, but you hear a man's voice from the other commercials. Do you need a break? And that's when she says, "You read my mind." And then we hear, "Escape to a world all your own, where your problems float away. When you need to go away, but you don't want to go away. Hydra Soak." It's a commercial for a luxury bath. And it says, "Find the goddess within." I mean, could this be an even bigger red flag? Could this be a louder klaxon alarm going off? Okay, so the way I'm looking at this is that the first two were major events in her life, with the Stark bomb missile that her and her brother were staring at for days, waiting to go off to kill them, as the rest of her family had been killed with Stark weaponry. And then Hydra, the Hydra taking over of S.H.I.E.L.D., almost the world, putting people on death lists, preemptive strikes, everything that Hydra had done. After all this, her brother die, she having to kill her lover, watching him resurrected to be killed again in front of her eyes. Do you need a break, Wanda? You read my mind. But that still brings us to who? And I'm still betting on Nightmare. That hasn't changed for me yet. But that commercial was one of the most telling, I think, they've put out. Now, it also gets interesting in this story because we get to see tension in the town, with the townsfolk, so to speak. Because Vision gets to see Herb and Agnes outside in discussion. The wall is still destroyed. Herb is acting normal, and they are having a very active, whispered conversation. Which, again, if this is the real Vision, he would have been able to hear it. This is not Vision. He talks to them, and Herb is extremely scared. There is something about Geraldine, who has shown up and is inside talking to Wanda. They are very, very scared of something. In fact, you can see Agnes, the fear in her eyes, as she is trying to tell Herb, shut up. We need to tell him. We need to, but we can't. These emotions of fear, of abject terror in her eyes, if Herb continues to say what he needs to say. They talk about Geraldine. She's new there. She doesn't belong there. She doesn't have a husband. At one point, Agnes even says she doesn't even have a home. Now, this is the shotgun in scene 1 about to come up in scene 2. It's an extremely tense scene. And it eventually ends off with Agnes suddenly acting like everything's okay, a wink of the eye, a ring of the bell, and she's off to have her merry day, and so is Herb. Inside, the scene was as tense as the outside was curious. Inside, Geraldine and Wanda end up having a face-to-face. Wanda is singing a traditional Sokovian song to her babies, as she has now had both of them. Yes. And while she is singing them, she mentions that she has twins, and she herself is a twin. And Geraldine says, he was killed by Ultron. Wanda mentions his name is Pietro, and she says he was killed by Ultron. And man, let me tell you, this scene gets so immensely tense right here. There are horror films that have been made over the decades that would wish they had this level of tension. She is not happy with Geraldine. Ask her what she said. What'd you say? Geraldine tries to backtrack. She gets nervous. She's playing with the necklace, which Wanda notices. The sword symbol. in the teardrop, the same that she saw in the back of the beekeeper who came out of the sewer, the same that was on the color toy helicopter in her black and white world in episode 1. The look in Wanda's face is pure aggravation, frustration. She is mad. When Geraldine can't give her any good answers, she's not happy. Well, the scene plays out with Vision outside, and when he comes back in, there's no Geraldine. And he asks where she went, and Wanda simply says she had to rush home. There's the shotgun that they just left us. She doesn't have a home there in Westview. Yeah, something's not right. Oh, by the way, I also want to point out that as far as I know, this is the first time Vision has technically been referred to as a synthezoid, as he is mentioned in the comic books, which again I think strengthens this theory about him being recreated without emotions and Wanda rejecting him, creating her own. Now, who? Why? Again, Nightmare. Nightmare whispered to her, whispered enough to get her to go where he had this trap laid, where he knew he could manipulate her to do this, to create this. Why? Because Mephisto needs souls. His soul has been fragmented for whatever reason. Maybe after the, 4 times of the shattering of reality with the snapping of fingers on the gauntlet glove of destiny that Thanos had? Maybe. It definitely had ramifications throughout the entire universe. And maybe he needs this. Maybe this is where the connection is. Now, after the birth of the kids, the doctor says 20 fingers, 20 toes. Now, that may sound funny that he would specifically reference that the child has all its fingers and toes. This is said in the 70s, and that is basically an old phrase, 10 fingers, 10 toes. As long as your baby has 10 fingers, 10 toes, it signifies a phrase that you have a healthy baby. So I hope too many people don't go reading into that too much, because that's really all it is. Isn't it? I also find it curious, much like the way Mr. Hart and Mrs. Hart just left at the end of the dinner party in episode 1, that when Vision was going to take the doctor back so he can make his trip that almost got canceled, his vacation, that the doctor says that they're not going to go on their trip. He says that it's a small town and they're hard to escape. Yes, that was as blatant as a pie in the face. That's exactly what that was. Just like the devil's in the details, that's not the only place he is. Don't think of these as throwaways because they're so obvious. They're keepers. And then the end of the episode, we get to see Geraldine, who we all know as Monica Rambeau, literally ejected from the force field, mystic, bubbled, whatever you want to call it, the domed town of Westview. There is scientific equipment up against the wall. Like, is that generating it, or is it keeping it from expanding? We don't know. There's spotlights all around it, but she gets ejected with a loud static discharge on the ground, but did not look confused to me. Immediately, agents, which again we already know from previous trailers, are swarming around her. We see the helicopters coming in place, and she's about to be picked up for the extraction, and probably she's going to have a few people to talk to about what happened in there before they send her back in. And that's how it ends, with the Monkees, the classic 70s group, the Monkees, playing Sleepy Jean, which is also a little telling. Now, after watching this, my wife asked me what I thought about the theory that Wanda is physically somewhere. She is physically at a sword or shield. Maybe they're working in tangent. She is physically somewhere in a coma-like state. And that has somehow manifested herself and the effects in this town of Westview. That could be the case. I hadn't thought about that before. I think she would have been easier to deal with, though, if she was on hand, so to speak, for Sword and Shield. Sounds cool to say that. For Sword and possibly Shield to deal with. But I don't know. I get the feeling that she is physically in this town, and that's why they keep trying to make physical contact with her. But whether she's awake in this town or not, and that's a mental or astral, mystical representation of her, that could be. I doubt it, but that could be. So she's awake. I believe still that she's being manipulated by someone other than Mephisto, someone that works for Mephisto / with Mephisto. I now believe that possibly Nicholas Scratch may not be involved at all. Maybe the cat was just a tip of the hat to knowing the character exists. But regardless of whether it's Nicholas Scratch or whether it's a Nightmare, we have an agent of Mephisto directly working here. Possibly that's why red is the only color that had bled through originally when it was black and white, because the character is pretty much all red. Red and black in various shades. Next episode, we are definitely going to see what's going on from the sword end. We may even get more than just a few seconds at the end. There may be a good 5-10 minutes solid dedicated to Sword. Because we're going into episode 4 of 9. We are right. It was supposed to be in 8 episodes. We're right at the midway point. This is where the first answers have to be starting to given to us. But of course, answers that are going to have more questions with answers that are going to keep us going from episode to episode while we're looking for them. I think that we are going to see definitely the introduction of Randall Park. We're going to see Kat Dennings' characters in here with dialogue next episode, because that's going to help the audience, us, learn what happened before episode 1. This is going to be the first inklings we get of what happened in the background. I'm still banking on, nothing else has changed that I've seen so far, that she was given a new fake vision. She declined it. I think Hydra is definitely involved in this somehow. There's way too many Hydra references than just what she, suffered at the hands of Strucker during. This is more than just past references. They're involved. Maybe this was a Hydra sleeper cell. Maybe. But I still also like the idea of where all the villains going to come for this massive CGI battle at the end. It's got to be someone. Now, Pietro, the mentioning of her brother, this is highly important as well. We are going to see him next episode. We are going to see Pietro the end of next episode, I believe. I don't think he's going to be a character in the show for that episode. That is going to be the setup, and that is going to be the holy shit moment at the end. Something's bad is going to happen, and then the cavalry comes in at the end of the episode, and it's Quicksilver. But it's not her brother. I don't think so. I still think they're going to be changing things up to a degree. Yeah. I think we're going to see multiple things going on, because the multiverse is getting cracked, remember. So that's what I thought about what happened. That was what's going to happen, I think, next episode. But this is definitely one of the most fun series I've ever chased. I hope you're having fun along with me. Put your thoughts down there. Come on, let's talk about your opinions. I'm never right about anything. more or less. So maybe you're going to be right about something. And let's get talking about it. Thank you very much. I'm your buddy Big Giant G for Two Gun Pixie presents WandaVision.